Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the Daily Medicine transmission for September 28th, 2021. Channel of Divine Power. So welcome back, everyone who is a subscriber and has been to this channel before. It's so great to have you here. And if you're new here, welcome. Also great to have you. I appreciate each and every one of you so much. And if you want to support this work and this content, you can hit that subscribe button. You can like this video. You can share this video. You can certainly comment on this video. I love to hear your feedback about things. And that actually does influence the AI algorithm that is going to spread this message to a wider audience, suggest it in people's feeds, no matter what platform you find yourself on. BitChute, YouTube, Odysee, I'm on all of those. So you can support the channel by interacting with the content, and that's a really great way to do so. So welcome, everyone. It is the 28th of September. Anybody else feel time like contracting and moving much faster? Because it seems like it is. Even today, it feels like that was the case. Time is moving a lot more swiftly. And I do believe that there is an intention behind that. There is a sense of contraction that is speeding up some timelines here because we've reached critical mass. And I've talked about this yesterday. And what has come through very strongly for me is how much, and for all of us really, but it was made very clear to me last night into this morning, how much Mercury retrograde in conjunction with Arcturus is a blessing. It is a gift. It is a gift. And I know that Mercury retrogrades get such a bad rap because of mundane astrology and the fact that everything will go haywire and you should never do anything or make any decisions. And it's like this, Mercury is retrograde like 3 or 4 times a year. Like that's kind of impossible. But there is something incredibly insulating about this particular retrograde in conjunction with Arcturus. It's insulating. It's like a lens. It's a lens from Arcturus that's turned inward and is amplified within us. And that particular energy that's coming from Arcturus is very deep truths and a capacity to move so swiftly between polarities, to transfigure ourselves so adeptly between these two polarities. It's as if they don't even exist, right? Consciousness has one single goal. It works for one purpose, right? And so when polarity, which is a natural part of this reality in order to create something new, when they are interacting with each other and that wheel is spinning, it's spinning so fast that it almost looks like the hub of the wheel isn't moving. And that's where we ultimately want to go. And we will have to be brought there to a certain extent. This new moon on the 6th is no joke. I'm going to suggest that you watch the report from that I just posted yesterday for the equinox to solstice. It goes over all the major transits that are going to be unfolding. And what we're going to find here is that some of them that are about to happen now, before we leave this lunar cycle that we're currently in, when we had a new moon in Virgo, there are a few transits that are going to highlight the theme and the pattern that these particular connections are going to come up over and over and over again in the next few months, right? We have eclipse season coming. We have the nodes that'll be shifting into Taurus and Scorpio come January 2022. So the eclipse, especially the full moon lunar eclipse in November, on the 19th of November, right before the sun moves into Sagittarius, those last degrees of Scorpio are really, really potent. And of course, it happens every year, right? At the same time that the moon or the sun moves into those last degrees of Scorpio, which are kind of a release valve, a socially acceptable release valve for everything that has built up in terms of the power that is created with our interaction with each other, our communion and our cooperation, whether it's conscious or unconscious. It's still creating something. This is this is such an important piece to understand in order to understand the bigger picture here. Just because we are not in our own consciousness aware of it, it doesn't mean that we are not subconsciously and certainly unconsciously giving our attention, our cooperation, and our consent to a ritualized process that is going to create something. So the last degree of Scorpio is always this like release valve and a releasing of. It's very sacrificial in a lot of ways. So the full moon lunar eclipse, and of course this is Pleiadian territory. The end of Scorpio is opposite the Pleiades. And so there is a natural release that we have to contend with as being part of the natural world, right? The Scorpio realm and the eighth house is certainly the death and rebirth dynamic that we cannot really get away from in a physical material form. This eclipse is just going to be really intense. The whole eclipse season, the total solar eclipse is also part of this season from equinox to solstice. So I really, there's a lot of information there, but it's important to understand what is coming. As of today, though, we are at our third quarter moon going to square the sun. So we are still in this lunar cycle that started with the new moon in Virgo, and that third quarter moon in squaring the sun is a crisis in consciousness. What are we conscious of, and what are we going to be conscious of? And we learned a lot with the full moon, as we always do. It's a culmination point. It's a major release point. When you see what is otherwise hidden deep in the subconscious, right? The sun reflects back full illumination of the moon, and what is hidden deep inside under the surface is made available to us in that moment of the full moon. And so we learn a lot, we see a lot, and we have the opportunity to release a lot. And as we now are in the waning part of the moon's phase, it's getting darker and darker and darker. And especially because she's very powerful in Cancer. We saw our high priestess come out yesterday, right? We are going into that space of the subconscious, of the darkness, of the inner realms. And it's very important that we are prepared for that, so that we see clearly with our, maybe not our physical eyes that respond to light, but with something else, right? We want to be aware of what's going on down in the subconscious. And wow, it's just pouring right now. That just came out of nowhere. Very, very interesting. So let's see. Solar wind definitely picking the speed is definitely picking up. Some geomagnetic unrest, of course, but the Schumann completely flatlined, right? Not a single blip. It does appear that there's been another smaller earthquake on Crete since yesterday, and also an earthquake that, fairly sizable, not massive, but in the Atlantic, west of La Palma and the Canary Islands. So there is definitely still some seismic unrest and some activity in those areas where there are underwater and very large volcanoes. So keep that in mind as well. Nothing that we can do anything about. We can't do anything about right now those types of events except be aware of them. But we've reached critical mass, and this Mercury retrograded Arcturus, like I said, was a blessing. It was a blessing. It is an opportunity to not only insulate ourselves, but turn the lens so that it is all, the energy is all being directed inward, right? In terms of our mental capacity, our rationality, our accumulation of knowledge, our communication, right? All of the mercurial aspects that go along with the archetype of Mercury turned inwards now. And with Arcturus, this massive star, number one. Number two, representing this very deep wisdom, deep knowing, and specifically a deep knowing of how the universe is able to stay in balance, the mechanisms and the knowledge that we can apply in order to stay in balance is very much part of the Arcturian signature. And so to have that retrograde, I felt very reassured when I woke up this morning, despite the very obvious amping up now. And part of reaching critical mass, as we're going to see here in the reading and the astrology, it's all written there, is that when we come to that point, there is an inevitable repolarization that we have to accept as part of that process. And so when we've reached now this critical mass of awakening on this planet, there is no choice but to have the counter response or reaction to that, and the intensity is continuing to ramp up. So we're gonna look at the specific astrology and the symbolism that is going about, that is related to all of this. And of course, the reading is really putting us as ourselves, as individuals and as a collective of humans, in the spotlight about how we're going to respond, what it's bringing out in us, and where we can channel divine power from, because we certainly have access to the full range of natural power that we as humans is our birthright, right? And being able to see past the black and white of the chessboard is really important in order to engage that power and to really step into really strong spiritual transformation. And it certainly is it's definitely on the menu. Let's just put it that way. But there are, like I said, there's always a counter to this. And even if you are able to step back and span back and see the big picture and step away from the emotionality and the attachment to the divisiveness of the chessboard, it doesn't mean that we should ignore what's actually happening. And, if you've been following me for a while, and other people, that this time frame is the flashpoint, right? That we've reached the critical mass, and now there is a spreading out of the energy that has come about because of that. And there will be counter moves in order to mitigate that awakening that have also been in place for a long time. Now, I do feel, like I said, that the timeline is getting sped up to make up for some of that really strong, like I said, this reaching, I can't say it enough, this reaching of critical mass. And it really happened in correlation when the Schumann spiked up to 80 hertz. I mean, now it's down to nothing again, right? Back down to its baseline, and it's hardly even blipping, even though we're getting a higher speed solar wind. There was a massive explosion on the sun early this morning that could be coming our way as well. So we'll see what happens with that. And when they're projecting, it will certainly land. But boy, oh boy. So let's just get into reading. I want to show you what's going on here. And the insulation, it's not like an insulation where you're like, wrapped up and protected and not having to look at what's going on out there. It's more of the gift, the Arcturian gift that came through with the retrograde is the turning inward and projecting inward of that power and that adeptness to be able to move between our spiritual will and love, right? Simultaneously. And it's moving so fast, like I said, that the hub of the wheel doesn't even look like it's moving. And this is where we want to be. And this is the intention we want to set with the new moon on the 6th. So of course, we will talk about all of that come Friday when we do the weekly report. You can look at the seasonal report that's now posted on all of the platforms, the equinox to solstice. And if you're on social media, I've added some extra little astro dots that connect to certain political figures, their charts, the astrology of the full moons and how that relates, and just to get an idea of the fact that, I'm not making predictions, but what I am exposing is their very predictable playbook in terms of when they activate certain things. And we talked about that in the report, right? In the solstice report, if you already watched it. It's predictable, right? It's predictable. These full moon times are prime ritual time for the elite, right? And so knowing that and knowing what's going on involved with the players and how that correlates to what's going on now can certainly give you an edge on an energetic edge, right? When we realize what's going on, when we actually have our eyes open to what is happening, because it's right in front of us, right? It's not going to, and for a lot of people, it's going to be a big shock. And of course, we've been talking about that too. But for many of us, especially if you've been here, it's not going to be a shock. And in fact, it's your awareness and your open eyes that have allowed you to see that it has been in front of our faces for the whole time. And the only real tools that they have are, deception, illusion, distraction, and programming of the subconscious, so that we inadvertently consent and participate in their really obvious timeline of ritual. That's all they have, right? It's all they have left. So, and it's always what they've had, right? I mean, it's when you are bound to materialism and you don't accept or accept that there is more to that in a very, in a very real way, and accept the creator as the creator, right? Then you only have so many tools in your toolbox, right? And it's just rehashing it, right? It's just the same shit with a different label, and they keep doing it over and over. So anyway, that's my spiel. Let's get into the reading. Speaking of using their tools against them, my Lord, if you don't understand how these particular modalities actually work, then how are you ever going to be out ahead of things? Anyway, how are you ever going to be out ahead of things? All right, so let's look at the reading here. And I'm going to check in with the chat real quick. Wait, I'm still finishing it. Well, you can go back and finish that. It's certainly going to span over a long period of time for the next couple months. That shit's not changing, right? That's the thing about astrology. These are fixed points in time. These are variables plotted on the graph, right? This is the blueprint energetically of the cosmos. And so that's one thing we can rely on, is that these cycles aren't changing. It's really about the way we interact with them that makes the difference. And if you understand the cycles like they understand the cycles, then you can utilize, you can be the counter move in some ways, or just completely hijack their plan entirely. So now let's look at this reading. This is, again, I'm feeling very reassured, as much as and as intense as it really is right now, because, well, number one, this reading, certainly, because I definitely went to bed last night very, how do I say, none of this is new. None of it's new. I mean, it's been in front of us forever, like our entire lives and beforehand. Like, the plan has been in front of us if only we wake up out of the dream spell, right? So none of this is new, but, feeling the weight of it is certainly been on my mind. And I've had, certainly also my personal life and some really intense things going on that will add to the stress and a sense of, I don't want to say hopelessness. It's just kind of like, whoa, wow, this is really starting to come to a head. And in the report for the equinox to solstice, one of the things I talked about was the fact that all of these outer planets are going to be direct by the time we get to the solstice, except for Uranus. Uranus will still be retrograde. Everything else, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, Neptune, Chiron, all going to be direct at that point. So all of these really large transpersonal planets that represent large spans of time, large cohorts and generations of people, large institutionalized aspects, it's all been internalized and kind of with marinating in some ways, and now they're going to start busting out, and one after in the other through October especially, they're all going to start turning on. The engines are going to fire up, and these large planets that have big impacts on large structures are going to start moving forward. And so this is the time frame. So But this reading is really about those who have embodied this, right? It all starts with this. If you have started with this Prince of Discs, you, right? And this has come up before, but if you started here, then the rest of this reading is going to show you how we're really going to step into our power and be the ones that are kind of on the front line of what's happening. Now, the Prince of Discs, right? Stable, industrious. It's the air of the earth, right? So you see that the individual has a helmet, but the rest of him is nude, right? No armor or anything except for his head. That's important. He's got the globe in one hand. He's got the whole world in his hands, right? He's got a staff. He's got all of this circular energy around him, the wheels, even the backdrop of his chariot, all these little bubbles and circles and spheres in it, and the whole thing is spherical. He's got literally the Taurus or the bull pulling him, right? This is a transition from Aries into Taurus in when we compare this particular card in this archetype to the zodiac, right? So there is a sense of being stable and industrious and very thoughtful and inventive when it comes to improving things. So there is movement here, of course, because there's air. But there's also a very, very strong and very fixed earth component, right? There is a strength to this and a groundedness and a very material aspect here that goes along with the Prince of Discs. So slow and steady, unwavering. Once on the path, there's no getting off the path, right? Enduring and reliable and stable. So just like Taurus as a sign, if you know Taurus people or if you have strong Taurus, you know that they're really slow to anger, but once you push them over the edge, then it is like rageful, just like the bull, right? Once the bull is really antagonized to that point, that is literally a point of no return, and at that point, it's all aggressiveness and survival instincts kick in. And this is really important to realize too, because Black Moon Lilith is in her retrograde right now. Black Moon Lilith being that deep, dark feminine part of ourselves that is also about self-preservation and is also about the animalistic drive to survive and something deeper than our own subconscious, something that is connecting all of us to the planet herself and will act out in a way of self-preservation and can be utilized and can be manipulated as well if she's not fully recognized, if we're not fully aware of this power within us. And so it has its potential to be very powerful and useful, and it also has the potential to be utilized and manipulated in order to fulfill something that is not really in our best interest, right? Because the best way to control people is to hack their shadow, and that is Black Moon Lilith to a T, is your shadow, all of our shadows, right? That's what they have been doing. I mean, that's not new, right? I mean, to some people it is, but the fact that they have developed actual predictive analytics to be able to figure out where your shadow is based on your social media and your internet activity is something the military developed and then sold to big tech. So they're doing it on all levels, right? Anyway, stable, industrious. Have you been on the path? Have you been slow and steady and unwavering in terms of what you're building within yourself, what you're building around you, what you are allowing to grow? Are you enduring? Are you reliable? Are you stable, right? Are you thoughtful and inventive when it comes to improving stuff? Or have you been either stubborn or unmoving? Have you been completely not putting your head in the sand and not aware of what's happening, not moving forward on growing anything, being completely you'd be completely blindsided. So this reading is for those of us who have been on this path, right? Steady, reliable, and industrious. Now that comes in many different forms. There's no right way that this is expressed. This is just showing us, right? The court cards, the prince, the princess, the king, the queen, they are us or the people, right? They're actual people. So we as a people, and those who us that have been fulfilling this role this whole time, this reading is for us, right? And so then we move into the heart of the moment, which is bringing us to the Knight of Cups. And with our moon in Cancer today, I don't know why it's so like off, the formatting. With our moon in Cancer today, certainly this makes a lot of sense, right? Because there's the crab, right? The crab is the symbol of Cancer, the shell that protects the inner vulnerability, the cup or the chalice that is the vessel that holds our emotional and spiritual waters, right? And the knight is the fire, right? I mean, this is very, look at them, this is very archangel. There is tons of this reference in here. And actually the thumbnail that I used, the picture that I used for this video's thumbnail is a statue of Archangel Michael that was I took when we were in the German National Museum in Nuremberg, right? So tons of Catholic and Christian iconography all over, but especially in there. And so, and you can see in the reading, we got Archangel Michael. And this is very much reminiscent here of this archangel presence, like this warrior presence but an offering, right? And so the Knight of Cups, again, here's us at the heart. We at the heart here are offering this cup, right, of spirit and of emotional connection and love and companionship and friendship, all of the things, right? Healing. So the Knight of Cups, it's the fire of water, right? You're bringing the contrasts together and balancing them. Remember, that is the essence of the Arcturian nature in terms of applying that ability to find the balance between our spiritual will, the fire, and the love, which is the water. It's embodied right here. And you have the wings too. So there is that mercurial energy that's attached to this, right? Of movement. And with its retrograde, it's got a trickster quality to it. And I know that the trickster is very much a favorite reference in terms of the Cabal elites, their ritualistic and their focus, right? But that's also part of the way that we can kind of take that stuff back, right? If you understand what their symbolism is, then you can infuse their symbolism with your own energetic resonance and totally disrupt what they're doing. So in some ways, that's like chaos magic, using it against other chaos magicians. That's kind of interesting. But the Knight of Cups, balancing those contrasts, right? And this is a potential to provide real tenderness and emotional warmth if we're really able to get to actual depth and inner conviction. It requires that. So there's self-sacrifice here, there's redemption here, there's grace here, and compassion. So this is us in some ways at the heart here, offering this and presenting it and being able to balance the spiritual will and the love principle that was really given to us as a blessing in that Arcturian connection to Mercury when it's stationed retrograde. It was like, again, it was like the lens turned and flipped around, and we received it, and we're receiving it all through that magnified lens into our own our nervous system, right? Mercury represents the function of our nervous system, into our mind, into our mental capacity, into the way that we accumulate and utilize knowledge and discern, right? Because remember that Mercury also rules Virgo, right? But is in an air sign of Libra. So there's at least a comfortability here of applying this information, but the application is now coming from within. I mean, it's really strong. And so Arcturian starseeds, if you know your Arcturian starseeds, or you feel a connection, even if you're not a starseed, there are a lot of light workers have have a resonance with the starseed mission, even if they're not technically starseeds. And that is, you can still resonate with the Arcturian signature and the frequency. And so this is a really good time to connect and allow it to come in, right? Allow it to come in. This is a deep knowing and a knowledge, and it's about balancing the contrast. And in fact, we're able to not only balance them, but it's an offering, right? There's a strong offering here that we can give to those around us who are not did not cultivate this, who are not reliable and unwavering and industrious and slow and steady, right? And we've talked about this so much, about the balance that we need. The tortoise kept coming up, slow and steady. You're fragmented, get grounded. We're going to need this in October. We're going to need to hold that inner peace and that stability while all the chaos starts erupting around us, right? And it doesn't mean we're not going to have, opportunities to practice it and ways to be challenged. That's certainly going to come as soon as Pluto especially stations direct and Saturn stations direct. I mean, these are really strong movements. So it's just something to keep in mind. But this is an offering. We have the capacity to offer grace, to be a placeholder of balance for other people, and to find some real tenderness and emotional warmth to those who are going to be really challenged right now, and in the coming weeks and months. So Michael, here's Michael at the base here where we draw our power from, right? Here we go, in the position of our subconscious, in the position of our root, where we draw our personal power from, Archangel Michael. Here it is, channel of divine power. So we are really connecting again into our subconscious. This is where it is, our inner knowledge, into our gut, right? Directly down into the grid of the planet. Feel your courage growing from here. Trust your convictions. It's not going to come from your mind. This is, again, coming from the seat of your own creative power. Remember when we talked about Arcturus yesterday, where is it in the Boots constellation? It's literally at his groin, the seat of your creative power. Okay, again, is the idea that creation comes from this place, not from our minds, from there. And that is resonance, that is water, that is, and fire as well. Those two things coming together. So trust your convictions, right? And your power and your resourcefulness, right? That goes back to the Prince of Discs, being thoughtful and inventive. Are you resourceful? Can you get your needs met through the use of your intellect, right? And that is something that's going to come up really strongly with Jupiter, okay? This is a time of initiative and action in terms of your personal and our collective channeling of divine power, right? Trust yourself, trust your convictions, hold the line, and know that at the root here, there is, we have direct access to this divine power, and it's symbolized here, Archangel Michael, right? He is the defender, the flaming sword. He's got a flaming heart, right? He is the champion of those who can't defend themselves, right? The children. So this is where we can really draw our power from right now. And as it moves up through the heart of us, we get to the Three of Keys, the chess game, and specifically that it is reversed. Now remember, the black and white, the divisiveness, even the concept of good and evil, these are all brought about to continue to create division so that we don't see the one truth. There is one truth. There is truth. That's it. And it just is, right? Truth just is. It's awareness. It's being awake, and it just is. When we realize that participating in the chess game, that we are likely just the pawns anyway, we realize it's time to walk away. And this is where we can really release this power. And this is where we can have our conscious attention, is to walk away. And this is important because this is directly related to the third quarter moon squaring the sun today. Those images and the degree that it's at is very much related to this. And I'll go into it with the astrology. For now, this is showing that it's time to disengage emotionally, even if you can't physically leave, right? Not everybody's going to be in a position to go bug out or whatever and turn it all off. But it's important to realize that if you are in the this or that, right? The Democrat, Republican, even, like I said, good versus evil, anything that makes it that black and white is there to keep us separate in whatever fashion, right? And it moves all over, and it moves around. And it will continue to do so. So this is showing us that our attention and awareness can be put on walking away, disengaging from this. It's only through unification of humanity that we're really going to be able to end the dominator culture for good, right? So end your participation in the game, and it creates more space for what? Inner peace that we absolutely are going to need. We're going to need that stillness within us. And it's time to create a new strategy. That's a big part of this as well when it's reversed. Now, so what to expect? Look at this. Warrior, the fire of fire, the Knight of Wands, the fire of fire. Look at this guy, right? His horse is just like, he's got he literally has a flaming torch here. Remember, that's also Archangel Michael has a flaming sword. This guy has a flaming like club that he's, able to use as a weapon as well. Here we go. Sorry, guys. This horse is just like, and there's so much fire here. There's so much motion here. This is the purest manifestation of the fire element, the Knight of Wands. This is a pure leader. This is someone who's proud and commanding and noble and very honest, right? These are all the best versions of the fire, the spiritual will and the highest spiritual aspirations and the expansion of our individuality that allows for a strong will and spiritual transformation, right? This is where we're headed. This is really incredible, okay? And of course, this is exactly why there is going to be a real concerted effort to extinguish this in any way possible. So keep that in mind. That is inevitable, right? Again, the chess game is what, if you understand the game and you understand how and the board, then that's exactly what's going to happen. It's not over until it's actually over, unless you get up and walk away from the situation. Then there's no more game, right? And if humanity were to do that and in mass, which is happening, the critical mass is here. But they're still going to push back. They're still going to strategize the next move. And they're certainly still going to go through with everything they've been planning for a very long time. Like, they're not going to stop doing it just because we're doing this right now. If anything, that's just going to challenge them more. So be aware of that as well. So if you're struggling with this, especially this vertical axis of power, if you're struggling and you're like, I'm not really sure how I can really tap into this, like, what does this even mean? Number one, so the Seven of Scrolls, the intricacies in industry. Remember that big things take time, right? They're not going to happen right away. And that can be really difficult with all of this fire energy and these knights, right? Because it's very instant gratification with the knight. It represents the fire element. And so there is a flash point that we want and it's kind of expecting. So when this is reversed like this, it's really warning us not to move too fast, right? To not be too urgent or make any decisions in haste. It's really important that we realize that. Be patient with the process, right? Again, that will cultivate that still point within us. Bring joy to our steps of building this, right? Actually enjoy the process as much as you can. Find the joy, find the laughter, find the light in you don't really have to find it, right? The darker it gets, the more obvious the light is, it's more just about putting your attention there, and trust that every single choice you make, every single choice of activity, of behavior, of where you're going to focus your attention actually makes a difference, and it will build on itself, okay? But it's not all going to happen at once, and sometimes when we expect that to happen and we don't have patience to build really big things, we act in haste. And this, again, is something that can very easily be manipulated in order for us to be sloppy too, right, as humanity. And pay attention to your guides, right? Synchronicities are off the chart, right? Dreams are off the chart, especially with the moon in Cancer. More so when the moon is in Pisces, because you're really accessing like the full range of the infinite collective unconscious. But when the moon is in Cancer, we're diving very deep into who we are. And so there is still a very deep connection to our psychic and intuitive channel, just like that High Priestess from yesterday was what to expect. Well, now here we are. Remember that our guides are offering guidance, right? They can't come in and make any it's kind of like the prime directive from Star Trek, right? They're not going to come in and actually do anything outside of what we're asking, but there is always guidance available. We just have to pay attention, right? And we can't pay attention when we're distracted with all of the noise and the chaos and the spinning around and the frequencies that are constantly bombarding us at every turn. And like, the earthquakes and the volcanoes and all of this other stuff. It's important to learn to be aware and to be open and awake without being like shook. And so there is guidance here, right? You trust that you're where you're supposed to be. Trust that if you need to move, you will hear that it's time to move, but you have to be still within yourself long enough to hear it, right? And not be bombarded. And so this is really showing us and reminding us to pay closer attention to the signs, to the whispers, to the synchronicities, because they're here, right? They're here to help us. And it's really just our own gut and our own inner knowledge. And when we do that, then we can access that channel of divine power that is where we can really draw our personal power from. Now this, remember, trust your instincts. There we go again. Trust your gut for discernment, the truth, not your truth or their truth, the truth, right? There's your perception and my perception and their perception, but truth is truth, right? Use your instincts, use your gut, get into that deeper part of yourself when it comes to, well, what is the game, right? Because it is so layered. It is not going to be, in some ways it's right on the surface for us to see, but in other ways we have veil over veil over veil. So you need to use your gut. You can't necessarily use your mind necessarily exclusively to figure this out. And this is where people get trapped in their rabbit holes, right? When they're just researching and not actually using their intuition and their discernment to see the big picture of these things. So use your gut if you're not sure. If you're like, am I in the game or not when I am participating in this narrative? So use your gut, use your instincts, and be vigilant about it. And here we go with our Queen of Forces, be this badass of balancing the contrast. She literally balances the sun and the moon. She's standing in a pool of, or like a river, right? She's standing in a stream of water, right? So she is in fact grounded in her spirit and in her feeling, right? Her intuition, and it allows her to balance these two poles of herself. This is a very powerful position. Again, it's about balancing it, not getting caught in the chess game itself. And again, intuition and discernment and gut checks are really, really important. We're going to need all of these things. It's getting very real out there. So let's look here at our astrology for today. Our third quarter moon squaring the sun with our moon moving from Gemini into Cancer. Look at that. I mean, right away. All right, guys. Yeah, if you don't understand, see, this is the thing. It's like, if you don't understand their tools, you don't understand what they're using, then how are you ever going to, actually be able to outsmart them and to in some ways, use their tools against them? This is why they've simultaneously taken one group and been like, astrology is evil and satanic, and then another group that's just like, astrology will help you manifest whatever you want, and then another group that's like, oh, astrology, like the scientific community, oh, there's no basis to astrology, it's all bullshit, right? You can see how all of those different factions of people with their own perceptions have been very manipulated to not see the very obvious thing that the elites use astrology to plan for their events, okay? It's obvious once you see it. So if you don't understand it, how are you going to actually be able to stand up against them or to be able to outsmart them, essentially? So let's look at today's astrology here, like I said. Now, as of now, the moon has just moved into Cancer. 0 degrees Cancer is definitely a decision being made within us, right? We're raising the flag, and we're taking down the old flag. Now, this is about how we feel. This is about a personal experience. This is something that is about our internal landscape. So we're all in this place now, whether we are aware of it or not, where we are raising the flag and pulling down a new one. We're we're actually anchoring ourselves into who we are. Now, that is varied depending on where you're at, right? What you're anchoring yourself to and who you believe you are. So how this unfolds has a lot to do with that, okay? This is why people, when they know their own charts, when they can read their own astrology, then and they understand themselves, then they can use this as a way to be part of the process rather than be a victim to the process. Let's put it that way. So let's go back a little bit though, because first of all, we're going to see that the moon, before she even came into Cancer, was in Gemini, late Gemini, and was in a trine to our retrograde Mercury that is still in conjunction with Arcturus, okay? Now keep in mind, because it's retrograde, within the next day or so, it's going to come into, let's see, on the 1st, oh my God, October 1st is crazy. I talked about that in the equinox to solstice report, because if you look at the chart, it is really, it's striking how much is going to be happening on Friday the 1st, which is this square again to Pluto. Anyway, we'll get there. Right now, what we're going to focus on is the moon, right, in this trine, you know, this 120-degree, very stable angle, favorable, harmonious angle to our retrograde Mercury, still in conjunction with Arcturus, still getting, you know, we're still getting all of that frequency from Arcturus and what it represents right into our own cognitive function, our own nervous system, right? And it is such a gift. I can't express enough how much that message came through to me. Like, this is so timely if we choose to see it that way, right? If we choose to harness it, it is going to really, really support us in this process. So now with the moon, though, in Gemini, in late Gemini especially, this, of course, is Orion starseed territory as well, right? Not getting caught. Again, the Orion starseeds, their primary function is to show and to hold the keys to not getting caught in the dialectic, not getting caught on the chessboard, being able to successfully play the game without getting emotionally attached to it. And in fact, it is the playing of the game that allows them to be better and smarter and more skilled, right? So President Trump, for instance, he has his sun in Gemini, Uranus in Gemini, North Node in Gemini, all in his 10th house of career and mission, right? All kind of hovering around each other. So something to consider. So, but this trine in particular to Mercury in Arcturus, this is about stripping everything down within ourselves, down to the very basic essence of archetypes, right? It's like, it's looking at, trees that are in the wintertime that are stripped down, and the only thing that you see is the frost covering all of the bare tree. And it's getting down to the essential nature of things. And this is what will, if we can embody this within ourselves, if we can allow ourselves to feel this and what this feels like, all of the, we've pruned back quite a bit from yesterday to today. And if we really feel into this with this moon, and had, right, this connection to Mercury retrograde, again, it's like the beaming in of the Arcturian nature, this very deep wisdom of how to balance these polarities and apply it to find balance, very much is like, it's very much amplified and magnified in some ways, and reflected back, right? The waters within us on this very basic idea, right? It doesn't have to be anything except this very essential idea. And when we can cut away all the extraneous stuff and get to this essentialization of it, this is going to be how we really make the best use of this Arcturian connection to Mercury in its retrograde right now. Uranus is in a sextile to Uranus right here in Taurus, is in a sextile to Pallas Athena. It's over here in Pisces, right? So that is a 60-degree angle. It is harmonious, but it requires an investment. It is the six-pointed star, right? And again, this is another pretty obvious elite symbolism, right? Is their six-pointed star, the seal of Solomon, right? The six in numerology is about activation and an investment of opposite and opposing energies, right? You have the ascension of the material and the descension of the spirit. So know that they use this, and they use this in their own way, but this is not because they made it up and it's in and of itself bad. They use it for their own purposes. So we use it to bring light and truth to the situation, to the world, right? You have to see what the symbol is being charged with and what it means and why it's so important to them. And then you can just like totally disrupt what they're doing by using that same symbol for a completely different purpose, because mathematics, geometry, all of these things are natural. They are our birthright as being incarnate, right? It's the fact that these individuals from millennia have taken this and use it for their own purposes. Anyway, I cannot stress this enough. It's so important to understand it, and understand the symbolism in general, and not be afraid of it and be like, you know what I mean? Realize the power of it and how much it is a natural part of life. Mathematics, geometry, physics, all of these things are from the creator, not from them, right? They distort it and invert it. Now, again, the sextile, 60-degree angle, an investment of our energies. So Pallas Athena is in this place now, the goddess of wisdom and strategy and war. She is in a position where she is giving us the strategy within ourselves, right? Because she's retrograde right now. She appears to be moving backwards in her orbit. And an asteroid, it's an asteroid. Pallas Athena is an asteroid in orbit. So what is she representing? So she's representing that we are in a simulated assault right now. It's live ammunition, but it's still simulation. And we're soon coming out of this dress rehearsal, right? And this sextile with Uranus, which is very much about the process of our character being revealed as we face the storm and face the trials in a very material way. And this is the pathway of awakening. This is what Uranus represents, that collective third eye, the awakening process as a result of total radical reorientation. So in this sextile, it's letting, when we invest these energies into each other, we really gather a lot of energy. And there is something to be said for the realization that within all of us, we are going through a simulated assault, and it is allowing us to build our character in a very material way in what we value in the material world, because that is Taurus, right? Very natural, physical reality, and it is awakening us collectively. And it is, in fact, if we can embrace that strategy and realize that the dress rehearsal is about to end, by the way. I mean, October is the performance in some ways. And so recognizing that at this point is really going to allow us to make the most, to harness the energy of that sextile between Uranus and Pallas Athena over here in Pisces, okay? So as we move forward today, then the moon has moved into Cancer. So that is where we're at right now. So we move forward this afternoon, and we find that the moon is coming into a trine with asteroid Vesta over here in early Scorpio. Now, Vesta is the goddess of the hearth, right? The flame at the center. She is the representation of the spark of our own spiritual will that is at the center of all life, and community life specifically, but also within our own soul, right? It is the eternal flame that if it goes out, we're screwed. And she's the patron goddess of that. So there's so much power and creative potential at the heart of all of us, with this spark of creation, right, that comes from the creator, represented by this particular archetype. Now the Trine, and she's in Scorpio, right? So she is moving through this, and Venus also in Scorpio, representing the descent into the truth, right? Into the power dynamics of relationships, whether we are aware of them or not, and what we get out of it, right? And it's only for those who have the ability to go into these places and draw back the curtain on their own shadow that is going to come out of this in a way that is able to not fold under the pressure, right? Or to have, the ego death is a big part of the Scorpio and the big part of the Scorpio and 8th house dynamic. So Vesta is here, and the spark, the real power of our transformation is coming from the power of our relationships. And she is making that, that archetype is making that very clear to us. Now the trine over here to a moon in Cancer, the inertia of these institutionalized connections is really, really strong. The symbolic representation that has been embedded not only in our personal psyche, but in the collective psyche for generation upon generation upon, it's embedded in every aspect of our culture. Corporate branding in and of itself is a form of idolatry that is giving us false representation to give our energy to, right? And these are really strong, really, really strong. And when we personally bump up against it, we're going to have to deal with the aftermath of that, right? And it's not to say that we can't, but it will take a large group of us. It'll take more than just one individual to really start to degrade to really start to break down the inertia of these institutionalized symbols. Now it goes the other way too. We have the potential as humans to come together and center around a specific symbolic representation of God and the Creator. And when that happens, then nothing can break us down, right? And it's going to be the moon in Cancer with those who are trying to break that down and go up against the collective will that are going to find the tragic results. So it really just depends on which position you're finding yourself. Either way, these two things are supporting each other very strongly. And there is always a tragic result when you leave your car on the tracks, right? You may get out of the car, but your car is going to be destroyed when the train comes, right? And that's what that really represents. Now, something to keep in mind is that between now and tomorrow, let's see here. Where are we at? I just want to make sure where we are. We're going to find, the moon is going to be in conjunction with Sirius. It's a big deal, and it's going to be in a sextile to Uranus, okay? Uranus, so just keep in mind that when the moon comes into Sirius, again, this is prime ritual activation. So just be aware of that, and the fact that they are going to be using that in the next day or so is also something to be aware of. Now, and there's other things that are going to work in our favor in this situation, and I'll get to that in a minute. I just want to finish what we're doing today before I get to tomorrow. So the moon has in that trine to Vesta, and then the moon comes to square the sun, okay? All right, here's our third quarter square, as we talked about, our crisis in consciousness. Now, the degree that the sun is at, I want to actually read the Sabian symbol, because you're going to be like, yeah, that is exactly what's happening right now. It is, so the symbol, right, the archetypal intuitive symbol is a woman feeding chickens and protecting them from the hawks, right? So think about it. There's a simultaneous thing happening. We're in Libra. The need to face the antagonism of powers of darkness as one attempts to feed the mind of as yet helpless and frightened apprentices. Every release of new potentials brings about a polarization of effects. We have to accept the karma of what that means, right? So as we are facing the hawks, right, we're simultaneously attempting to feed the chickens, but feeding the chickens is what brings out the hawks in the first place. You see what I mean here? This is the degree of the sun. Now, it is in a square to a Cancer moon that has us feeling into the play of invisible forces, and behind all vital processes, the perception of occult forces at work, right? We have to be able to see this and feel this, and this is why our intuition and our discernment and our ability to plug in deeply is important right now. And the crisis in consciousness, it's not like you pick one or the other. It's the friction when these two meet each other, we grow from. So yes, we're going to be all kind of expressing ourselves through this simultaneous antagonism and trying to feed and protect. And this doesn't necessarily literally mean that. It could, but it also can mean that we are dealing with that reality within ourselves, right? While we are facing the antagonism of the hawks, we also are trying to feed the mind of that part of ourselves that still is not capable of protecting itself, if that makes sense. And we have to accept that when we've reached critical mass, that is going to bring about a new polarization, right? We've reached this pinnacle point of critical mass, and it immediately splits off, and we have antagonism and we have feeding the mind at the same time. And when it meets the moon later tonight, or late afternoon, depending on where you are, or in late tonight, depending on where you are, it's the friction, because we still have to be aware of the invisible forces at work. And that antagonism and that polarization is definitely part of the chessboard. And to realize that, okay? This is where this square is going to come into effect. A whole new level of consciousness will come from this if we lean into it and not be afraid of it, and certainly not ignoring it either. This, again, is why this Mercury retrograde at Arcturus is a gift. It's a gift, and it allows us the ability to simultaneously do all these things while also feeling into what is happening behind the scenes, that is utilizing our critical mass to create more division, okay? So what else? And at the same time, this moon is in a quincunx right after that in Saturn, that is now moving into the degree in which it will station direct, right? And this is the cosmic egg. Oh, wow. The cosmic egg. You know the cosmic egg. It's wrapped with the snake, right? The cosmic egg. There's something new being born here. And it is knocking on that shell as we speak. And the quincunx here, right? 7 is the same degree, because it's 7 degrees. And we round up for the Sabian symbol. So we know that we also might feel the invisible forces at work. We might be intuitively aware of them and realize that. But where things are not fitting here is the reality that the serpent's coming out of the egg. The new mutant is coming, right? And it's knocking on the inside of us right now, right? That shell is cracking within us. And so we also have to just accept that this is happening. That's the thing about Saturn. There's no stopping Saturn. It is the unfolding of material reality. It is the marching ahead of time. It is the matrix of physical reality. So there's no stopping it. And there's a responsibility to take here, that this is what's happening. And even if we are aware of the occult forces at work, we still have to accept the responsibility of what's coming forward anyway, right? Because it's already been happening. So there's an opportunity here to adjust our expectations around a lot of things related to this. Now, when we look at tomorrow, I want to show you a couple things here. Number one, the sun is going to then come into a trine with Saturn at this degree. So the sun's still at that degree of like the woman feeding the chickens, right? This is that antagonism is very much in line with the polarization that comes as a result of that new creative potential, that critical mass, that new potential that is created, those new potentials, right? The polarity that's created, very much part of this new mutation that's coming forward, right? And these two things are finding a lot of traction with each other, this trine between the sun and Saturn. So in some ways, it's like our expression of self that the sun represents, and the full creative expression of who we are outwardly is going to get a lot of support and crystallization from Saturn. There, you know what I mean? Like, oftentimes when Saturn and the sun are involved, there's a lot of ego battle and stuff. But in this trine, they're really supporting each other. So it's not so much of an ego battle, but it's more of like, I'm giving the ego, or the self that is expressing itself, the sun, I'm giving it some form and I'm giving it some structure. And it's really about, in the process of this repolarization, it's the emergence of something new within us. And it's going to be different for everybody. It's not exactly the same in terms of our perception. Let's just put it that way. What's coming is cannot be stopped, right? Just like this egg hatching, it cannot be stopped. It's really what we're going to do in the face of it that is being presented to us. Now, this particular trine here with Venus and Neptune, right? Neptune about the mandate coming down from the mountain, right? Everything else dissolving away so that you are only having direct cosmic experience with what is, and applying that to life. And the trine here with Venus at 22 degrees of Scorpio. Let's see here. This is tomorrow, by the way. I just want to remind myself, because I'm pretty sure I know what the symbol. Yeah, that's right. An aggressive release, a socially accepted aggressive release, a socialization of instincts, right? Something coming through that will be a channel, right? Maybe this is the channeling of our divine power in some ways, because Venus is very connected to the material world and what is valuable to us in a material sense. And it's this particular degree stresses the socialization of primitive instincts according to cultural ritual. So it's hunters shooting at wild ducks. That's the Sabian symbol. So I mean, we are programmed in a lot of ways at a very biological level to be hunting and have aggressive instincts. And the thing about Scorpio is it's showing the power that comes from the social relationship, and we create containment systems and outlets for these very deep animalistic things. And I see here that this trine with Venus and Neptune tomorrow, along with the trine with the Sun and Saturn tomorrow as well, is really going to bring some major events forward. Oh, and look at that. There's the moon in a conjunction with Sirius and a sextile to Uranus. So just be aware of the fuckery, right? Be aware of it, right? Don't... And there's nothing you can do to necessarily stop what they're doing, but if you understand, you can disrupt it with your own frequency, right? And not unintentionally feed it, right? That's a big part of their program in MK Ultra, is to get people to feed their own ritual activity through things like corporate branding and symbolism, right? Symbolism will be their downfall, because they can't help it. They have to tell us what they're doing so that they don't violate the prime directive of free will. Anyway, there's a lot of fuckery about, I'm not going to lie, and knowing what to expect and looking at the same tools that they are using to initiate it is one of our best courses of action. I want to read some of the comments here. I want to be the queen of forces. Girl, you are the queen of forces. We all are the queen of forces. There's something about those dark-haired women that we are like the sorcerer. But the sorcerer that, you have to match them with their tools and their weapons in a lot of ways, right? But you don't want to get pulled into the division and divisiveness that they create to keep us separate from each other. It's about that balance, isn't it? So, hi, Meow Meg. It's good to see you. on the live as usual. So, all right, guys, I'm going to leave it there for today. That's plenty of information to absorb. Wow. Let's see here. If you are interested in a reading or energy work, I am offering a flash sale. If you book before or by the 6th of October, you get 30 minutes of Reiki, which also gives me a lot of intuitive information, by the way. And the distance work is just as powerful as that is in person. I've also started working with people's animals with distance Reiki, so that's something to consider as well. And then you get the lunar transit reading for October, for the October lunar cycle. So the 6th up to the 4th, which is the November full moon, or November new moon in Scorpio is November 4th. So you get the reading. And if you have starseed markings, then I can find them for you in that reading as well. So the flash sale is $77 for the bundle. You just book through catalystenergies.net, just book the lunar transit reading, and just put in the subject line that you are accepting the flash sale, or you can just email me. That's in the description box below as well. And let's see here. Yeah, we'll just keep on keeping on, my friends. Let me know if you need anything. I love your comments. I love your feedback. Come join on Telegram. The conversation keeps getting better when more people are participating, so I like that. And yeah, check out the equinox to solstice report if you want to see the long-term situation. And also, too, that's something that we can look at if you want to get a check-in for a longer period of time. That's something, I haven't offered that as a specific service, but I have been doing custom work for people. So if you're interested in that, we can figure out what that would look like. And I'm actually going to be doing that reading for somebody else today as part of their larger starseed package. So there's lots of ways we can work with this. And so, guys, have a great day. I appreciate each and every one of you. Take very good care of yourselves. I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.